Hey folks, Comic Cowboy here, and I am not on camera for this video. We're going to look at the books, and the topic is the art of collecting non-keys when you put together a run. Although the lessons in this video really are applicable almost to the art of collecting any type of non-key, I think there's some pointers here that are important, but you know, it's in relation to putting together a series of books in the X-Men run. In this example, by non-key, I mean books that do not contain a first appearance, or it's a first appearance but it's not significant, or it doesn't contain an origin of story, a crossover appearance of another hero or a team of heroes, or the cover might be notable. So absent those elements, you get to a really kind of interesting decision to make when you pick up this material, is what do you pay for and what do you look out for? Because I found there wasn't a lot of information around this topic, and I was putting together a run. I knew the grade I was targeting, which was 9.0 and higher, but I didn't really understand the nuance of 9.2 versus 9.4 versus 9.6. When talking about non-keys, they're a different beast than keys. And I made some mistakes, and I learned from those mistakes and impart that wisdom, or at least share with you what my experience was so that it might benefit you. Particularly when I upgraded books, meaning I set the bar for 9.0 in Silver Age X-Men. And when I had that run completed, I wanted to upgrade certain copies because I found there wasn't much difference between some non-keys from 9.2 to 9.4. They don't double in value, for example, or 9.4 to 9.6. And as I upgraded copies, I sold a bunch on Comic Link, and I was really disappointed by the results. And I reached out to Jason, the consignment director over there, and I asked, hey, is the market soft for this material? And, he imparted some lessons that I'll share with you as I look through the box, with some of the reasons why that may have been the case. But I learned from that experience, just be really careful laying out money for non-keys. They're a very volatile class of comics. And they're necessary, but you got to be careful because sometimes the way these books appreciate or move around in price can be somewhat disadvantageous to the collector. So given that, I feel that there are just some lessons to be learned as you go about this really essential process. So right here is a prime example of a book in the run, X-Men number 10 from 1965. It's a first Silver Age appearance of Kazar. Who the hell is Kazar, you may ask? Yes, he was around in the Golden Age. It is a first appearance, Silver Age that is, which is sort of a step down. But Kazar really isn't a guy that a lot of people and a lot of collectors will know. And the odds of him actually materializing somewhere in the future in the X-Men universe are just so slim that I consider this book, believe it or not, a non-key. And so qualities I look for in non-keys are honestly to find the best example I can find at a particular grade. This is a really nice example of a 9.0. The registration's great. It's got off-white to white pages. Would be better if it was white pages. But incidentally, a lot of these X-Men books from the original run of the early 1960s, it's hard to get white pages on these books. And the other thing to keep in mind with collecting the X-Men, I think it's worth pointing out that when these books were published, when they were first published, this was not the series that was the darling of the writer's pen. This material sold not nearly as well at the newsstand as, say, the Fantastic Four did. It really took quite a while for this series to take off, and as we know and appreciate today, I think is largely due to the work that Chris Claremont did in the 1980s. So unfortunately for the X-Men, a lot of this material from the 60s, including some of the first appearances of heroes and villains throughout the whole line, sort of began and ended sometimes in a single book. We did not see them again. I'll talk about some of the heroes and villains that did persist. Obviously, there were quite a few. This would be considered a minor key. This is the second appearance of the Juggernaut. Obviously, the Juggernaut is a guy that we continued to see many years into the future. Here's a lovely 9/2 off-white, white pages copy. These are amazing covers too. These early Kirby covers are some of the finest work that he did, where he experimented with 3D perspective. It was really groundbreaking work. And here's kind of an interesting point I'll make with sort of a 9/2 minor key book here, X-Men 17. As you get really intimate and familiar with the books in a run, right? First of all, you're not alone. There's a lot of other collectors that are doing the same thing. And after a period of time, a sort of unstated, unspoken perspective appears around certain books in the run that, one, are more difficult to find in higher grade. You can look at the census numbers, but there's also something that's a bit of gut. And also books that, because of the colors or the composition on the cover, are really tough to get in high grade. And here is such a book, this fantastic all red cover of X-Men 17, and None Shall Survive, this apocalyptic cover of the X-Men, wouldn't be considered a key because there's nothing here other than a Magneto cameo that's stated on the label. But this is a fantastic book that is really hard to get in higher grade. And I've had 9/0 copies before, and it's really hard to even distinguish the difference between the 9/2 and the 9/4. If you see a 9/6, that's absolute insanity. You have to keep in mind that this book from 1966, here before you in a 9/2, often was not in this great of shape on the newsstand. You know, these books were handled from distributor to newsstand to collector. I mean, they changed hands 3 times. And even if you put the book aside in the early 1960s or the mid 1960s, you may not have done so in this kind of condition. It's actually remarkable. And this is a book for collectors, as what I indicated, were putting together runs and had to deal with non-key issues. This would be one to spend some time getting in great shape. Here's another one, X-Men 16 in 9/2, which is the old label goodness, as they say, off-white pages, Kirby cover. Hard to find almost anything wrong with this book. For whatever reason, X-Men 16 and X-Men 15 have sort of eluded me over the years. I knew I needed this book for the run, and I just could not find copies in this condition. And with the purple and the yellow, and it's a fantastic cover, they were really hard to find. Even though there's no first appearance, there's no origin of, there's no crossover, there's not a classic cover here, this is still, I would consider, a really incredible, fantastic book in and of itself, even when you're not putting together a run. But as I mentioned, when I kind of got my ass handed to me, when I sold this stuff on Comic Link, you know, they pointed out to me that the non-key material doesn't sell that well. I know that's a really simple statement to hear, that, you know, non-key material doesn't sell that well, meaning it might go for below the recent GPA price, is sort of mystifying for me, and it sort of leads me to believe that this kind of material, you got to be careful with buy it now stuff on eBay when you're buying non-key books. They tend to be priced a little higher than you can find them at auction. And the other thing at auction, you're going to run into dudes like myself and other collectors that are completing runs. So when the prices go high on these books, it may honestly be one or two collectors bidding it up to fill a hole. So like this book, it is by no means, X-Men 16, a hot book at all. It never has been. But when a copy comes available in this kind of condition, a 9.0 and a 9.2, there are going to be some collectors that have just been waiting for the book to become available to get a copy, and you're going to wonder why the price is so steep. Be careful of going up against people putting together runs. I would not advise buying these books as one-offs. Here's an interesting kind of discussion. Here's the origin, first appearance of the Mimic. And we didn't really see too much of the Mimic beyond this book. So it's an example, I guess, it meets the conditions of being a key, because it's a first appearance, but we really don't see or hear from the Mimic again, even though he's kind of a badass villain. Look at this guy. He kind of looks like the Angel. He's got a strange visor on. I don't know what his power is, because I haven't read all of these books, although they've been lavishly reprinted over the years, so they are available. Here we go into X-Men 21. And honestly, this video is just kind of looking at some of these early covers because they're wonderful. I mean, this is just fantastic artwork from the mid-1960s that represents really some of the finest comic artwork that was done at the time. And here we've transitioned from, it's hard to notice, but this is transitioned from Kirby. See, Kirby, Roth, and Ayers did this cover here, and then Kirby went on to do other things, other projects with the publisher, and Werner Roth did this cover very much in the style of Kirby, which is this dramatic composition, usually indicating action and playing with perspective. Awesome. Here we get into origin and first appearance of El Tigre. Who the hell is that? Again, in this early X-Men run, there's just a lot of these villains that appear in these books one or two times, never to be heard from again in the 1970s or the 1980s, all the way through today into the cartoon series that came about in the 90s and through the 2000s. A lot of these villains, sadly, were not heard from again. And it's really interesting because when you go through the original Fantastic Four run, it started in 1961, right? A few years before the X-Men. Those books, almost issue by issue, contain much more relevant and significant keys. There's way more first appearances of villains, mostly, and heroes, and other pivotal moments. And there is a constellation of villains that appeared in the Fantastic Four that went off into other books in the Marvel bullpen. Not so, unfortunately, with the X-Men. A lot of theories why that might be the case. It very well could be that this title, the X-Men, was underperforming, not only in relation to the Fantastic Four, but at the time underperforming with respect to some of the other titles that they were publishing at the time, whether that is the Incredible Hulk, the Journey into Mystery line, which became Thor, the Tales of Suspense line, which became Iron Man ultimately. So these books are really interesting in that respect, and I actually think, although it's not reflected in the prices, these books sell on the balance less expensively than Fantastic Four, that I think there is reason to believe, and I haven't looked at the census numbers, right, that these books very well could be more scarce than their counterparts. There's less of them available for the simple reason the evidence was that they were not selling as well at the newsstand, right? So Marvel potentially was not publishing these in as great of numbers once they realized that. Here's a great Juggernaut appearance. These are fantastic books. Here it is in the semi-old label, the 9.4. It's a little bit more faded, the grade on this earlier label. Here it is in white pages. These books, for whatever reason, are very hard to find with white pages. And I have a few copies. I have a few examples, such as this one, X-Men 30. Jack Kirby, once again, returns to do the cover work here. And on the CG label, as you can see, there's absolutely nothing really significant to note here. But it's a tough book. I mean, it's really tough to get this book in nice condition. Look at those absolutely gorgeous purples. And it's a fantastic cover. The Warlock wakes. I don't know who the Warlock is. Maybe you do. Maybe you've read this stuff. If you have, drop a comment. I would love to know. And it's fun. We're just looking at books. You know, this is chill. You know, have a glass of wine or a beer or whatever it is that you like, because I just like looking at this stuff, especially since it's slabbed. I can't open the stuff up and read it. I like to look at the covers. Here is X-Men 41 from 1968. At this point in time, in the late 1960s, some of the heroes that appeared in Tales of Suspense or in other lines, Journey into Mystery, were already into their own runs. The Submariner had his own run at this point in 68. Iron Man had his own run. Silver Surfer had his own run. And the X-Men were chugging along. Pretty soon, as we get into the 50s of the original X-Men line from 1963, they start to reprint this stuff, right? And at this point, Kirby has moved on. Werner Roth on the cover here, it's George Tuska cover, along with Don Heck. And Don Heck, as you may know, was a very significant Golden Age artist, known for his genre material in horror and war. This is a cool book. I wouldn't consider it a key, but it definitely has its fans. X-Men 35, first appearance of the Changeling. I don't know who that guy is, who that villain is. And it's got this Spider-Man appearance here, which is just totally excellent and awesome. It looks like Spidey is battling the X-Men here in issue 35. And usually this copy, because of Spider-Man, goes for good money. Even though it's considered a non-key, it's still a book that has quite a bit of fans. Here we go to X-Men 37. First appearance of the Mutant Master. And Blob's also in the issue. I don't know who the Mutant Master is. He could have been a guy that was involved in the production of some of the Sentinels. I'm not sure. In 9.4. Moving into X-Men 38. Origin of X-Men backup stories begins. So here in the late 1960s, this is white pages, they start to regurgitate some of the stories. They're not totally exhausted yet. And again, I make the point, when you're collecting this non-key material, you will find that there's not too much difference in price point between a 9.2 and a 9.4. 9.6 and 9.8 are very rare with this material, and they could go up in value just because they are high grade. I'll show you an example of that. But when putting together a run, given my druthers, if there's not too much of a price point between a 9.2 and a 9.4 and a 9.0 and a 9.2, meaning in the low hundreds of dollars, go for the higher grade book. It always has a better chance of realizing more upside if you ever decide to sell it. Because when you get into keys in the X-Men run or any run, When you go to 9.0 to a 9.2, it's not uncommon for the book to go up 50% or more in value. Here is an X-Men 45, and I might have, no, I don't have what I paid for there. This is a fantastic issue based just on this incredible cover, and I got to take it out of the plastic just so you could really take a look at the quality of this book. And I don't edit these videos, I go live end to end, so I'm just going to slide those out of the way. Not a professional here, I'm a collector. X-Men 45, look at this book in 9.6, and as I said before, you're kind of in awe of a book that, if you were lucky, arrived in 1968 in this condition at the newsstand. You were lucky to see the book in this shape at the printers, you know, when it left the press itself, which makes a book like this really coveted. Off-white to white. Would have liked to see white pages, but off-white to white in a 9.6 for this particular book is awesome. It's really cool George Tuska cover. Now we get into a book that I would consider a key and a late key. We're almost done, folks. I like this book a lot for a number of reasons. It's also a collection book. It's not a pedigree book, but as you can see here on the label, right, this is the Don and Maggie Thompson collection. I don't know too much about this couple. White Pages 9.4. First appearance of Polaris. That's Magneto's daughter. She actually, I think, appeared super briefly in the end of the last Wolverine movie. So it stands to reason that we may see Magneto's daughter on the silver screen. I think she appeared in a television show not that long ago. Cool book, awesome book, love this book. I buy multiple copies of it when I can. White Pages, it's just a great, underrated book of a character that could be really important in the future, with this great Jim Steranko cover. It's kick-ass. And then he delivers as a follow-up, and we're about to wrap this video up, friends. Yes, we are. With issue 50. This is where I called it a day. At some point in the issues that go into late 50s, not year by number of book, they start to reprint stories and reprint covers. This is awesome. Second appearance of Polaris, Magneto appearance, Origin of the Beast. And this Jim Steranko cover is a knockout. Great book. Just honestly a masterpiece, totally underrated. You can still pick this book up at a good price. And to get it in 9.4 is just a thing of beauty. And honestly, that's what some of this is about, really. I mean, if I could make a point here that, you know, some of this is actually, at least from my perspective, more important than the value of the book. And yeah, sure, you care about the value, want the thing to go up, etc. The price isn't going to fall apart. Once you put some money into these books, you're going to hold your money in those books. The bottom is not going to fall out. May go up 10%, may go down 10%, as these sort of non-keys do. But it is a thing of beauty. This is actually a wonderful thing to have and collect and appreciate. And, you know, it can't always be about what you can get for this book upon selling it again or putting on eBay or Comic Link. You want to have these books, you want to hold on to them, you want to enjoy them. You know, they're not raw, they're in the slabs. I can't take them out and read them. But honestly, in a book in this kind of condition, in a 9.4, once again, an example that really has made it from the printer to the collector, and many steps along the way, many hands along the way, many instances where this could have been damaged, and here it is in this kind of condition, is just a joy to behold. You know, people that collect this stuff do it for the love. Yeah, there's a monetary aspect to collecting the comics, but without the love, without the passion, I don't think it's as rewarding. Really isn't. Well, hope you enjoyed the video. Got a bunch of other books in here we'll look at another time. They're kind of random. Oh, that's a cool book. Some Silver Age stuff, some Golden Age, etc. I got tons of books to look at. Subscribe to the videos if you can. I would appreciate that. If you made it this way, all the way through 25 minutes, I thank you for that. What an endurance test. I usually do long form videos, you know, 18 to 20 plus minutes, because I find that's the way to go deep on these topics, and hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment if you'd like. Take it easy.